So when we talk about Robert Pickton, we're not just telling another true crime story. This is something much bigger. It's really an examination of a horrifying series of murders that expose these deep, painful flaws in our society, in our policing. This is the story of a catastrophic systemic failure.
And that really is the question that just hangs over this entire horrifying story, isn't it? In a major modern city, how do so many people just vanish, one after another, while a predator is just operating completely unchecked? To even begin to find the answer, we have to go back to where it all started.
It all kicks off in a place where this crisis was just allowed to fester, a place where the very first calls for help were basically ignored.
So you have to picture this place, Vancouver's Downtown Eastside. This was the environment from which Robert Pickton drew his victims. It was a community that was really on the margins, where its residents were already facing these immense struggles, which made them incredibly, tragically vulnerable.
And this is so important to understand. We're not talking about statistics. These were people. They were mothers, daughters, sisters. They had families who loved them. But because so many were indigenous, or were involved in sex work or battled addiction, their disappearances were just systematically overlooked by the authorities. Their families would report them missing, but those reports just weren't treated with the urgency they deserved. Their voices were effectively silenced long before they ever vanished.
Now here's the really chilling part. While all these women were disappearing, the man responsible wasn't some ghost hiding in the wilderness. No, he was operating in plain sight, and that led to one of the most devastating missed opportunities in Canadian criminal history.
This is the guy, Robert or Willie Pickton. He and his brother ran the family pig farm just a half-hour drive from the Downtown Eastside. Locally, he was known as a bit of an outcast, socially awkward, reclusive, hardly the criminal mastermind you might picture in your head.
And this is how he did it. It's almost deceptively simple. On his farm, he set up this makeshift party barn he called Piggy's Palace, and he used it to lure people from the Downtown East Side with promises of drugs, alcohol, and money. It was the perfect trap, drawing vulnerable people away from a place of desperation to a place of total, terrifying isolation.
This right here, this timeline reveals the single biggest failure in this entire case. Just look at this. In 1997, a woman escapes his farm, barely alive, and tells the police he attacked her. Pickton gets arrested, charged with attempted murder. But a year later, the charges are dropped. Why? Because the victim was deemed an unreliable witness. Think about that. That single decision left Pickton free to continue his horrific crimes for 4 more years.
It wasn't until years later that the world would finally learn the truth, the absolute horror of what was happening on that isolated pig farm.
The break in the case finally came in February 2002, and the way they found him, it wasn't because of some brilliant investigation into the missing women. Nope, police went to the farm on an unrelated firearms tip. But almost immediately, they started finding items belonging to the women who had vanished, and that discovery, that triggered one of the largest, most gruesome forensic investigations in history, uncovering human remains and DNA that finally linked the farm to dozens and dozens of victims.
During the investigation, Pickton himself allegedly told an undercover officer just how many women he'd killed. The number he gave them? 49.
And then he added this absolutely chilling detail. He said he was disappointed he hadn't reached his goal. This wasn't some crime of passion. This was a cold, calculated campaign of murder, and he was keeping score.
So, they have him. He's arrested. The focus shifts to the courtroom. But it became clear pretty quickly that this wasn't just one man on trial. It was the entire system that had allowed him to get away with it for so long.
Okay, so legally, here's what happened. Pickton was convicted of 6 murders and got the maximum possible sentence, life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. Now, because the evidence was just so complex and horrifying, prosecutors chose not to go forward with the other 20 charges, even though the judge himself acknowledged Pickton was almost certainly responsible for those deaths too.
You can really see this as 2 trials happening at the same time. On one side, you have Pickton's guilt, his horrific actions. But on the other, you have this profound failure of the institutions that were supposed to protect these women. Police didn't take the disappearances seriously. They completely blew that golden opportunity to stop him in 1998, and different police forces just failed to work together.
And look, this wasn't just speculation. An official inquiry later confirmed these weren't just accidents or oversights. The final report pointed to systemic racism as a key reason why the disappearances of so many Indigenous women were not investigated properly. It was this damning indictment that basically confirmed everything the victims' families had been screaming for years.
So why does this case still resonate so strongly today? Because it revealed something deeply, deeply uncomfortable about society itself.
You know, the Pickton case was this brutal wake-up call. It just laid bare the fact that a person's value in the eyes of the justice system could depend on their race, their job, or their struggle with addiction. It forced a national conversation about who we as a society decide to protect and who we decide to ignore.
At the end of the day, yes, Robert Pickton was the monster who committed these murders. But this whole tragedy was enabled by societal indifference. He thrived in a blind spot that was created by prejudice. Dozens and dozens of lives could have been saved if these women had simply been seen as worthy of being saved.
And that's the thing that should keep us all up at night. This story is a grim reminder that the most dangerous threats often flourish not in complete darkness, but in the shadows that we choose to create. And it leaves us with a haunting question to consider.